Yeah. Thank you. Can everyone hear me right now?
Yes.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to do this remote. I was hoping to get down there and sit in the conference room with all of you tonight, but due to the weather we have going on today, Zoom it is. So thank you for that. My name is Nick Lano. For some of you that I haven't met before, I'm with Arthur J. Gallagher, and we're the property and casualty insurance broker for the district. So back in 2014, some of you may know the district actually joined and became part of a member-owned insurance cooperative for public school districts in Minnesota, known as the Minnesota Insurance Scholastic Trust, or MIST, we like to call it. And really, the district, Albert Lee, you've been instrumental to the success of the program. With the program as a group, we're able to pay the catastrophic claims with an insurance company, but then retain and pre-fund a lot of the smaller claims as a group. So back in 2014, when the district really had the foresight to join the group, you were able to recoup and recognize the benefits of the pooling arrangements. So this past December, the MIST board, which is made up of 7 of your peers, actually declared a dividend for the 2014 and 2015 insurance policy years. So in total, the group is actually has a total dividend of about $311,000. So that's money going directly back to its members and not money going to an insurance company. So Albert Lee's portion of that is you will have a check in the mail for a total of $16,376 for insurance dividends, which I think is great, and one of the whole premises of why the MIST group was formed for Minnesota Public School Districts. So it's a great representation that the program is working just like it should be. The group is financially sound, and we continue to build surplus year over year. And we would anticipate future dividend checks like this coming as long as Albert Lee stays in the group. So we just wanted to say thank you for your continued partnership in MIST. Today, 30 school districts make up the program, and you are one of the ones that from 2014 and 2015 that get a nice return check in the mail for being part of the group. So we just wanted to say thank you for that.
Thanks, Nick. Brian, you got anything you want to add? No?
Cool.
Thank you, Nick. You do a really good job for the district. Anytime we have questions, you're really just on the ball with everything, and I think that helps out with us in keeping claims down, too.
Sure. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you, Nick.
All right. Yep. Thank you. Have a great evening, everyone.
Next, Employee of the Month.
There's a further question.
We're good, Nick.
I'm going to start with Cindy. So I'm going to ask Cindy to come forward. This is Cindy Helgeson, and she was nominated by the staff at Helgeson. I've worked with Cindy a couple of times in different positions. She has been with the district for 20 years, since August 2001. And here's what her nominator said. Cindy is an MVP at Helgeson. She's a functional skills LPN, which means she works with our high-need students and provides nursing services for those students every day, in addition to other paraeducator support. But primarily, she is an LPN for students. She not only has to provide great flexibility as well as varied expertise, but to our students with some of our highest needs. She's always willing to go the extra mile and is always on top of things. She's always 2 steps ahead. Her sunny and caring personality is greatly appreciated in our school with both staff and students. I am glad to know her both personally and professionally. So I'd like to introduce to you Cindy Helgeson, and she was our November Employee of the Month. Thank you.
Don't forget your award. Yeah. Is there some reason why? Is this equipment working? I'm getting no signal. Oh, okay. All right, next on the agenda is approval of tonight's agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Been
Just-
moved and seconded.
Yes, 9.1 science update. We don't have, our teachers are not here today because of the weather, so I'm recommending that that be removed, and we will do that in March.
Okay, we'll include that in the motion then. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the amended agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, then that would be 6-0, right? All right, number 6, consent items. Do I have a motion to approve the consent items, or anybody?
I will move to approve the consent items.
Been moved by Kim, seconded by Angie. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? 6-0. All right, that brings us down to reports. Number 7, Superintendent.
Things tonight. First of all, I want to thank the school board.
I had no idea there were so many different organizations working in the county for the betterment of kids. From the police department doing alcohol and tobacco checks to the crisis team working from the county. So there's many different. Right now they're working on updating the bylaws, and they have a joint powers agreement at the state ready to be approved. Also, tomorrow is the Teacher of the Year tea at the High School Commons at 3:45? 3:45, so if you want to see the nominees for Teacher of the Year, it'd be a good time to attend. Thank you.
Thank you. I wasn't at the January meeting, so I did attend the MSBA conference in January, and I'll present my report at a future meeting. Thanks.
All right, so I attended the curriculum committee meeting last Thursday, and it sounds like we'll get an update on some of that same information in a future meeting. They talked about some changes to the 8th grade science curriculum, which sounded very positive. It sounded as if students were being encouraged to use more critical thinking, and I just think that's a great thing. We had a finance committee meeting just just shortly before this meeting, so that will be covered later on in the agenda. And I just wanted to mention one other thing I attended was the memorial service a couple weekends ago for Lieutenant Brett Boss. And I mentioned that because he is a parent who I got to know because of my role on the school board. He was somebody who showed a lot of interest in what was going on here and reached out regularly. And I just want to acknowledge him. It's a big loss for our community, and he's missed. So.
First off, kudos to our Employees of the Month. That's awesome. It's so fun to hear the stories. Everybody does such great work in the district, and it's fun to hear and see that. Attended the Finance Committee. A lot of good information they'll be presenting to us tonight as far as the adjustments to the budget, so very good. I attended the Business Ed Committee meeting. Really good. We had some long discussions about scholarships and how that's going to come together, partnering more and more, working on things, so that was really neat to see. And then we talked about the Leadership Albert Lee program. They're hoping to get something going again starting this spring, and they also want to incorporate Albert Lee Reads into it, so tying those books together. A lot of discussion on the manufacturing and the different issues we're having. And then another long one was childcare. Childcare is going to get bigger and bigger to try to deal with so that families can work, get where they need to be, and also have a safe place for their children to be. So I think we'll be hearing more and more about that. With that, kudos to the girls hockey and all the athletics. It's been fun watching them. It's fun to see a lot of the different programs getting going again, all of the athletics, the activities, in-school, out-of-school activities. So it's good to see some normalcy again.
I agree, Dennis. I attended the Concurrent Advisory Committee meeting, and that's just local school districts with Riverland Community College, and we just talked about potential of additional programming or any requirements for licensing, those kind of things, and exciting stuff in the Concurrent arena. I attended the hockey game last week, and it was very fun to be there. The energy was great, and what I loved was it wasn't just the parents of the hockey players. It was a widespread of the community and the young hockey players and that excitement around that, and so I was really fun time to be there. Bruce mentioned toy. The toy committee is busy planning both the tea and then the final presentation reception as well. It's also CTE month, which is Career and Technical Education month, and so I believe there's been some social media posts both at from the school district and from the college, but just to kind of call out our career and technical education programs.
Thank you. The only activity that I attended that hasn't already been covered, it's the beauty of being last, is the Education Foundation meeting, which was held last week, and some interesting things going on there. We have an ongoing relationship with staff at the high school to administer and govern scholarships for which we, as the foundation, are the custodians. And we have a wonderful working relationship with Jessica, currently at the high school, and she actually, I don't know if it's appropriate that I should mention this, but she has tentatively agreed to join the board of directors of the Education Foundation, which would be a wonderful arrangement since a large amount of the work that the foundation does has to do with scholarships, and it would make sense that we would have somebody that's actually in the trenches working with scholarships involved in our meetings and involved in our activities. So that will be a wonderful addition. We also, I was in, I think, Hawaii of all places, when Brad, I think, and Steve Tufte met with Jennifer. The foundation is a super boosters club for the school district, and we want to be a boosters club that has a great relationship with the entity that we serve. And our approach should be, and currently is, what can we do to help? Not we have some money that we want to fund for you, and you're going to accept this program whether you like it or not. And I see that happening. We have a relationship with the district so that if there's a need out there, the foundation's there to do whatever we can to help provide for that need. And I see some good steps going in that direction. I was at a girls' basketball game, of all things, for a wrestling coach to attend. And it was really fun. And kudos to Dennis, who's on the coaching staff. And that's great. You don't blow your own horn enough, Dennis. And they do a great job. And the girls are a scrappy bunch, and they didn't win, but they were close. And it was fun. The wrestling team did not succeed in advancing to the state. It's too bad. We'd have been the third team, which is, I don't know if we've ever had 3 teams go to the state tournament before. So it's been a pretty good year, all in all. All right. Safe and healthy schools. Kathy, update on COVID. I have a mask, but my policy with masks currently is when in Rome, do as Roman. So I don't see a lot of people wearing masks. So if you were, I'd probably put mine on.
All right, so here we are, February. This is the cumulative active cases since the beginning of August for the school district. And you can see our peak there in December and January. We are coming down, and it's dropping substantially. These are active school district cases, so these might look different than what you find in other cases, other places, because this data is also student, staff, family reported rapid antigen tests, which are not lab confirmed, so they don't show up in the Minnesota Department of Health, but they do show up in our database when parents and staff report them. This is from this morning, Freeborn County on the Wolfson site, and our numbers are dropping rapidly. We're about in the middle now if you go out to that site. And pretty much across the state you see counties dropping. The purple diamonds are their projection based on what they're seeing. We did send out last week the changes to the plan, and really for positives, it hasn't changed. If student or staff test positive, they'll be required to isolate for 5 days. We will provide them a test if they're interested. We don't recommend, as does the medical center, that they go have a PCR test at day 5 because that can be positive for up to 90 days. We're allowing, if people are interested in testing between day 6 and 10 or 6 and 9, we have had some folks take us up on that, but again, that's optional. Someone had indicated, this will be, be less cumbersome now, and yes, it will, but we still must report all positive test results to the state. Even if they're rapid antigen tests, we have to report those in what's called their red cap survey. And our nurses are getting caught up for the most part on all that reporting back from the month of January. We still have to monitor dates and test results. We have 4 staff that were reported over the weekend that are positive, and so we still have to report those, monitor those, track those. Those are still our active cases. Hopefully they reach out. I check every day to see who has returned and not reported and uploaded their negative test results, but our principals are doing a lot of that work with us. And so COVID-19 protocols are modified, but there's still daily work to be done by staff. It's still a reportable infectious disease, and we must report to the Minnesota Department of Health. So, for close contacts, really, we will notify families that a child was exposed in a classroom. At lunch, we do see lunch and eating when we tracked cases over the last 2 months in particular. Exposures when people are eating. And so we still will report that to families, and then they can make a decision whether or not their child will return to school. We will provide tests if they're interested. Again, not required. early childhood and pre-K, we're following the Department of Human Services recommendations, and again, that is the decision of the family whether or not to send their child back to school. And of course, if they have symptoms, we'll send them home, but really putting more of that back onto parents. Our ALC students who are housed at Riverland will follow the Riverland protocols. Lastly, we work with Susan Leibel. It actually works mostly with Steve Anderson. She's our safety consultant from IEA. We do fall under the Healthcare Emergency Temporary Standard, so not the one that was disallowed by the Supreme Court, but this has been in place prior to that. In Minnesota, and OSHA is just for employees. This is not for students. OSHA is for employees. So for our healthcare workers who work in our offices, our LSN, our LPNs, we still are obligated to follow what is called the General Duty Clause and General Standards under COVID-19. And so for our staff in our health offices, if a student comes in, they need to wear a mask and do a quick screening that our LSNs, our school nurses, will be very similar to what we have done for the last 2 years. They have to screen that student. If the student exhibits symptoms, we may ask the student to mask while they're receiving health care. But that is for the protection of our employees, and we must follow that. If they have no symptoms, then it is up to the employee whether they want to remove their mask, and the child, of course, doesn't have to mask. And the other thing is if there is a known case in our healthcare office, we have fitted all our employees, all our healthcare employees for N95s, and Sue Leibel did all that work for us. So that, although the bulk of the Minnesota OSHA standard expired on January 19th, this still stays in place until further notice. So that is all I have.
I was at a meeting last week. I heard middle of March, but I don't know the specific date, but that's what I was told.
Yeah, is this on? All right, I had just a few questions. Is there a threshold when we would go back to the masking and the contact tracing and all of that, or?
Well, we do have our 5% numbers that we continue to look at. We've come close to it over, especially in January, and that dropped fairly significantly in a short period of time.
There is no dot on the wall threshold.
Okay, just kind of playing it by ear, I suppose.
We did not have a threshold when we started the school year, and then we had, hundreds of cases within a week.
Yeah.
So it would be something, the society, you'd have to see a significant uptick in what's happening with the virus for us to look at any adjustments at this point.
Okay. I know, we've obviously got a lot of experience at this point. I'm just curious if we had to redo this, or if we, hopefully not, but if we had to look at the same situation next fall too, are there things that, from your perspective, you would do differently? Some measures worked very well, some maybe didn't work as well. Any changes that you would want to do?
The lethality of the virus would be a driver.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the biggest thing for me, and impact on kids. So, we have not sat down and done a after-action review of our COVID over the last 2 years, basically, because we've been in response mode. But that is something that, hopefully we get a chance to sit down and take a look at.
Okay, that would be interesting. Just a couple other questions people have asked me to ask about. We're still doing virtual days, is that correct?
That is correct. One of the major concerns we have out of ripping all these, or shifting away all the procedures we had in place is, how's that going to impact attendance, illness? Are we going to see an increase in virus spread? And so it would be prudent to stay the course with where we're at. We have 3 more virtual days coming up. Question related to that is, I asked this question earlier this morning. Child care from last Friday, out of the probably 1,500 students available in the district for elementary, 31 at Halverson, 17 at Hawthorne, 22 at Lakeview, and 25 at Sibley. So very few people are taking the child care option.
Okay. For the virtual days, are they, Rich, remind me, I know we covered this before, are those considered full learning days, or are students actually learning on those?
They are getting assignments and they are doing homework.
Okay.
So they're different than e-learning days, which are more bingo cards at the elementary level, where the kids are given a task to do in different areas. So there's more active, I would say, more active learning within the virtual day than there is in the e-learning day.
Okay. I've heard some concerns from parents that there isn't a lot of learning, so just wanted to throw that out there. But thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Kathy. Next would be the science update and the new curriculum in the elementary, but that has been postponed. I might add that Angie and I did attend that curriculum committee meeting, and so we're both eagerly anticipating the event that was scheduled for today. Effective and efficient operation, our amended budget.
So Bria's going to be joining me to present this. She's our business services coordinator. And really from the moment we present and you guys approve one budget, we start working on the next budget. And that's especially true between the preliminary budget that's approved in June and our revised budget, which normally is this time of year. We always have assumptions for that first budget, and some of those assumptions get resolved. And so we just like to do a kind of a mid-year correction to address those items and help us project where we're going to end the year in a little more learned way. So I'm going to start by talking about our general fund revenues. And again, we just really addressed the most significant changes. You were all emailed the digital version of this book, but now you have the bound version. We go into a little bit more detail in some areas, and certainly there are some comparative graphs at the end that we won't be looking at during this presentation. But again, this is what things have changed since the original budget to our revised budget. We are seeing that we're earning a little bit more in interest income, so we've upwardly adjusted that budget by $10,000. Probably the most significant thing was back in June, we did not know where the basic education formula, which is the biggest driver of our funding. Our assumption at that time was very conservative. We projected a 1% increase, where in fact we ended up getting a 2.45% increases, which is one of the largest increases certainly since I've been involved in school finance. So that generated about another $280,000 for us in just the gen ed aid. Kind of on the opposite side of the ledger though, we can earn an additional 0.2 ADM or average daily membership for our extended time students, and those are students who attend either after school targeted services or summer school. Now, when we were meeting in June, we were anticipating that we would see a fairly normal targeted services after school program this year. And in fact, that has not happened. We just haven't been able to find staff that are interested in offering that. We are absolutely planning the summer school targeted services, but we have not had after school. So we have projected to have, normally we get about 80 ADMs worth of revenue in a year for extended time students, and we've projected that downward by 60 to account for the fact that we're not doing the elementary after school programs. We do still get credit recovery. We are offering those programs, and so we are generating some ADMs there, and we will in the summer. We feel like we were pretty close in projecting the number of students that we were going to be serving in the district this year. Maybe a little bit less. We were hoping to get to 240 on our kindergarten. We're a little closer to 232, and so we did slightly decrease the number of students that we're projecting to serve this year. Our achievement and integration revenue is determined by our budget. And so the revenue is received, but it cannot exceed the expenditures that we actually have. Because the budget included some extracurricular events that we, again, simply were not able to run this year, we did reduce that revenue to match the projected expenditures. Most of that is used to fund our success coaches. And then we'll talk a little bit more later about our federal aid, but overall we are planning to increase use of those funds by what we projected back in June by about $600,000. So overall, we are projecting a total general fund revenue increase of about $575,000. And now Briya is going to talk to you about expenditures.
You want to run that? So I just want to introduce myself. I'm Briya Hamburg. I am the Business Services Coordinator here at the district. I know I've met some of you, but others I have not. I'm going to talk about first the general fund expenditures. Due to the 2.5% state aid that we had instead of the projected 1% and some of our federal COVID funds, we increased the budgeted salaries by about $330,000. We did have less contracts being taken than anticipated for our health insurance. That did result in a decrease of the benefit expense for that of about $400,000. With an increase to our liability insurance for fiduciary and travel policy of about $10,000, that is going to be offset by the $16,000 dividend that Nick presented us earlier for being in the co-op. We've had some unplanned retirements in the district, and that has resulted in an increase of $55,000 due to severance payments. We are utilizing subs more this year due to being in person, and we did slightly increase the daily sub rate, so our substitute budget is going up by $100,000. And the new science curriculum that the district purchased increased the textbook budget by about $232,000. The total general fund expense increase was about $300,000. With our COVID funds, we did increase both revenue and expenditures of about $150,000 for COVID testing grant. This grant is used to purchase tests throughout the district and PPE as well. With an increase to both revenue and expenditures for our ESSER 3 funds, and that was about $1,035,000. Part of that was used to hire the following positions that are listed. With an increase to enrollment loss revenue of $88,000, that was a new grant that we were recently awarded. We just didn't have that information for the primary or the preliminary budget. Revised budget projected fund balance is now at 12.09% compared to the 12.03% for the preliminary. For the food service fund, our fund balance is projected to be $475,000. That is down slightly by about $11,000. We are receiving a higher reimbursement rate for our students through the federal program, but we are taking advantage of that large fund balance and purchasing new equipment that is needed out at the buildings. Community education fund. The community ed classes are back to normal schedule and as well as the class fill rates, so both the revenue and expenditures have increased due to that. And lastly, our self-insurance, the health insurance fund that we have here at the district. We do have a projected increase for our revenue of about $37,000 for interest, and that is due to the restricted trust account that the district did get this last July. The interest that we're receiving monthly on that is higher than we projected. We have a $400,000 revenue decrease for our self-insured fund. This is due to less people that are taking health insurance contracts, and that does coincide as well with the expenditure decrease in Fund 01, or our operating fund. We have a $1 million expenditure decrease. Our expenditures and our self-insured funds are mainly our claims, and that is based off of year-to-date data, with our claims tracking lower than we expected at the beginning of the year.
So this is what was included in the packet that was sent to you. So this is the actual budget that we are asking you to consider approving. We've gone through the major changes. One thing I did want to note, at the end of last year, we did have a fund balance deficit in our long-term facilities maintenance funds. It is an allowable restricted fund to be in a deficit, mainly because of when we end up paying invoices for big projects. We are anticipating to reduce that deficit by the end of this year, and we will work our way out of that over the next couple of years. But overall, you can see that the unassigned fund balance is projected to increase from where we ended last year for the general fund. And then we have talked about our food service fund. Again, very healthy fund balance. And because of that, even with the expenditures for the equipment, we're still expecting almost $500,000 fund balance there. Community service fund, we get a lot of our numbers directly from the community service staff. But again, they are projecting healthy fund balances at the end of the year. Building construction fund, we did end FY21 with a fund balance, even though the projects were for the most part complete. By the end of this year, that will be a zero. And that fund is where we put the bond proceeds for the Hammer and Halverson project, which those projects are now complete. And then no changes to debt service, a very slight change to the custodial fund, which is one scholarship that we have in the district that we're required to put on our books. Bria already talked about the self-insured internal service fund. And before we ask you for your approval, I did just want to briefly talk about some factors impacting our school district. You know, we're fortunate that right now it looks like our enrollment will remain steady, potentially a slight decrease, but we're holding the line on that, which is the single greatest driver of our revenue. We're really fortunate right now. Minnesota has a very strong economy. We have historic surpluses. We had a very good increase to our basic ed formula at the 2.45% this year, and we already know it's going to be 2% next year. You know, districts are holding out a little bit of hope that some of the things being talked about at the Capitol, like funding our special ed cross-subsidy, our English language learner cross-subsidy, that potentially, even though it's usually not a year that we would see funding for school districts, that maybe that might happen. Obviously, thanks again to our constituents and our community for the renewal of the operating referendum. That goes a long way in our financial stability. And then again, the federal funds, which we've talked about, really providing us some opportunities for some resources to help support our students. Does anyone have questions?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Back on the general fund
Yeah.
expenses. Can you explain the line item increase to budgeted salaries 330 to 427?
Sure. So last June, when we did the approved preliminary budget, we had to make some assumptions, and we made the assumption around the basic formula going up by 1%. And so then our assumptions for salaries really had to align to that. So when that projection, the reality became 2.45%, and then when we had discussions with the board around where we could be on our contract negotiations, it really was aligned to the 2.45%, which was greater than the assumption that we had for salaries. So that's really the biggest part of it. We are now assuming, and we still have a couple of big contracts that we're still under the assumption category. But we are assuming a higher increase than we were assuming last June for those. And part of that, too, is some of those federal funds that we were able to hire some of those positions to support our students, and those are fully reimbursed.
Thank you. So, up on the general fund revenue then, the increase in the state basic formula from 1 to 2.45 gave us an additional about 279. And then the increase to budgeted salaries was more, so that extra came from federal funding?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Probably actually even a little more than that is part of the federal funds.
Okay, thank you. And then on the curriculum for the textbooks, I know we didn't have our presentation tonight, but how many grades does that cover for the new curriculum textbooks?
Do you, I know, what was what? I'm sorry. Do you know, Mike, what we've
It's the entire
purchased?
elementary.
The entire elementary.
And then I believe it's through the middle school as well. And I know they're looking at 8 and 9.
That's what I thought, yeah.
So this would be K through...
I believe
through
it's K7.
Thank you.
I think one of the good things just to bring up, we were talking about the severance, and most of those are sunsetting on all of the contracts now. So in the future, we should see less and less, or
Correct.
if any at all, of that.
Yeah, I think our paraprofessional contract and our custodial contract, the severance payment, the opportunity to get a severance payment sunsets at the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the 21-22 amended budget?
So moved.
Been moved by Dennis Deezer,
I'll second.
seconded by Kim Nelson. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome. All right. Next on the item on the agenda includes some contracts that we have been offered for approval. Kathy?
Sure. So the first contract is the Community Ed Coordinator contract. This impacts 2 staff. This is our Coordinator of Adult Basic Education and our Coordinator of Experiential Education. As you know, we've talked at great length about the revision of our entire community ed programming. However, this is not a contract that has substantially changed. It's a 2% and this are 1-year working agreements. They're not a bargaining unit per se. Question, that is all that has changed in that working agreement.
Okay, any questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the agreement.
It's been moved by Kim, seconded by Bruce. Any further discussion, questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, Community Ed Coordinator Agreement is approved 6-0.
So the most significant change in this contract, if we go to the very last page, is community education has grown by leaps and bounds, and under the direction of Chris Chalmers, we have many areas. We have early family education, we have wraparound care, we have Tiger Cub care, we have what you get in the mail, regular community ed programming, so we have staff, information specialists and marketing specialists out there. We have at the Hammer Field, we have our adult basic education, which operates here at Brookside as well as at Riverland. Multiple early learning opportunities, and then we also have unlicensed staff who move throughout those programs, as well as licensed staff. So this contract, we hire in this program people who work in multiple areas, and we've seen that some of them are paid one rate at 1 hour during the day, and then when they transfer to another program, they may get another rate of pay. So we've really tried to categorize, and you'll see the 3 columns there, and really make these employees relatively equal to other similar units in the district. They're, again, a working agreement. They're not a bargaining unit, but we want to make them competitive with our EAs and paraeducators and other programming. We want to make sure our office staff is fairly competitive with our support staff, and then our unlicensed teachers fairly competitive, certainly with our other, teaching staff that isn't necessarily licensed, but serve in those more challenging unlicensed teacher roles. And so it was a fair amount of work with Chris, Jenny Hansen, Penny Yankee. They really spent a lot of time and energy trying to come up with a more fair and equitable wage scale for these employees. So other than that, there are, I believe, we added a longevity pay for this group. And I added Tiger Cub Care to this group. They had not been a part of any working agreement. And those are the only changes, there are significant changes to this working agreement. Any questions?
How many people in this group?
As Chris talked, probably 50 to 80, depending on, how many, what programming is running at the time. Yeah.
I think it really brings into line for that longevity issue where it's hard to keep staff right now going with something like this. They've got things to look at and help move them forward.
And we do have community members who are interested in school year programming. They're not interested maybe in that 2,080 hours. They're interested in a 180-day contract or working agreement. And we know that community ed is as Jennifer had said, our community services budgets are fairly healthy. And so this is a scale that Jennifer and Chris and Mike working together feel that they can afford. And as we've talked about childcare, we really need to consider our Tiger Cub workers and employees there and work on bringing those scale up.
Okay, actually, this group now has a salary schedule with steps on it.
It does, Neil.
10 is, I know, everybody knows that I lots of steps on salary schedules, but 10 is workable and it does offer those employed the reassurance of knowing that they are being rewarded for having the years of experience. So, I would entertain a motion to approve the service staff agreement.
I would make that motion.
Kim moves. Second. Dennis seconded. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Off-schedule hourly wage.
So you get to see the off-schedule hourly wages multiple times during the year. And because we waited to revamp a lot of our community ed, our working agreement there, the addition or changes on the off-schedule wages are our boathouse workers with an increase, our lead staff, summer staff workers with community education, and I think the other area that Chris has talked about is community ed has really taken over that early childhood screening, and so update to the screening supervisor role to a comparable wage to keep somebody who's done this in an I believe it was an unlicensed teacher role, and we took it out of special services to keep that person employed and do quality work on our early childhood screening. Early childhood screening specialists. It also includes our driver's education, classroom and behind the wheel instructors. And I believe those employees at one time were in the teacher bargaining unit and they were taken over by community ed 10, 12 years ago. And so their rate is not on Schedule C anymore. So it's on community ed. Correct. Correct. As you see, this is a lot of the boathouse, rock gym workers. They're very seasonal, not necessarily every day. Sometimes college students coming back and our high school students to do some of this work, so.
And community ed is a little different than some of our other departments in that they generate a lot of their own income there. So as far as salaries, et cetera, how much of these are generated through community ed on its own compared to, say, the district supplementing?
So I can't really speak to community ed funding. I don't know if Jennifer can speak to that at all.
So the items like the rock gym and the boathouse, those are fully supported through community ed. The school district makes no contribution to those kinds of programs.
They also get specific funding from the state by the, is it per resident or?
Yeah,
so that
based on
money
our
goes right
census numbers, yes.